Hello there, I'm Kareem Zachary and you're watching All 24 News, World News program broadcasting to you live from the capital Algiers. Next, the headlines. Chad condemns the killing of 7 soldiers in an attack by Sudan's rapid support forces, vowing a swift response, and the UN warns of famine spreading among displaced people in Sudan. Next, in Syria, the army claims full control of Deir Hafer and parts of southern Raqqa, accusing the SDF of killing 4 soldiers and calling for a full withdrawal east of the Euphrates. Also in our news, in Western Sahara, the Polisario Front condemns disguised European funding against decolonization. Morocco accuses the EU of blocking self-determination and urges international action. And later on, Trump accuses Europe of playing a dangerous game over Greenland, announces new tariffs, while the EU urges NATO to address related threats. The details are right up. Welcome back to The Details. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, Chad is condemning a deadly attack by Sudan's rapid support forces that killed 7 soldiers and injured many others. According to N'Djamena, RSF fighters crossed the border illegally last Thursday, targeting both military forces and civilians in eastern Chad and causing property damage. The government called the strike an unacceptable act of aggression and a serious violation of Chad's sovereignty.
The government condemns the deliberate incursions into Chadian territory. This aggression constitutes a flagrant, serious and repeat violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Republic of Chad. This is not the first time that a violation of Chadian borders has been committed by the belligerent parties in Sudan. The operation carried out by the Rapid Support Forces resulted in the deaths of 7 Chadian soldiers.
In the same context, Chad is vowing a strong and decisive response after the deadly attack by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces. Officials warned that any further aggression or violations will not be tolerated. Information Minister Qasim Sharif Mohammed stressed that Chad has remained neutral in the Sudanese crisis and firmly rejects any spillover of the conflict into its own territory.
Chad is not aligned with any side in this conflict and will under no circumstances allow this war to be exported into its territory. The Chadian government warns for the last time the perpetrators of the attack and those who support them in a further attempt at aggression, provocation or violation of Chad's territory and borders will be met with an immediate, strong and firm response in accordance with the laws of the Republic and the provisions of the international law.
For its part, the Chadian army has raised its alert level along the border with Sudan after an attack blamed on the Rapid Support Forces, which killed 7 soldiers. Officials held high-level meetings in the border region, calling for tighter security and closer cooperation to protect people, property, and the country's borders amid the ongoing instability in Sudan and the Central African Republic. In another regional development, the Sudanese Doctors Network says 7 people, including 3 children and 2 women, were killed in a Rapid Support Forces bombing of a market in Diling. 32 others were wounded. The network called it a systematic massacre and held the RSF fully responsible. They're urging the international community to act immediately to lift the siege on South Kordofan, where the city of Diling is now facing severe famine and critical shortages of food and medical supplies. And this humanitarian crisis in Sudan is worsening, with food shortages in Darfur's IDP camps reaching deadly levels, especially among children, women, and the elderly, according to Adam Rijal, spokesperson for the General Coordination of IDP and Refugee Camps. The UN also reports deaths from hunger and malnutrition, alongside outbreaks of disease linked to lack of food and clean water. Meanwhile, the UNHCR says over 17,000 Sudanese have fled to White Nile State as people from Kordofan and Darfur seek safety. The agency calls for urgent relief and renewed efforts to bring peace to the country, which has seen decades of war and millions displaced. In another matter, U.S. President Donald Trump says the United States is ready to resume mediation between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Nile River and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. In a letter to Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Trump emphasized that a lasting agreement for a Nile Basin countries remains possible. Both Sisi and Sudan's Abdel Fattah al-Burhan welcomed the offer, saying U.S. mediation could help ensure regional security and stability amid the ongoing tensions over water rights.
I'm ready to resume American mediation between Egypt and Ethiopia, resolve the issue of Nile water, share responsibility, and in a final manner, I want to help you reach a solution that ensures the water needs of Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia are met.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, in Gaza, a 27-day-old infant has died from extreme cold at Nasser Medical Hospital in Khan Yunis, reported. Recent storms destroyed thousands of tents, worsening conditions in a region already blocked from receiving building materials. Meanwhile, the Zionist airstrikes continued across Gaza on Saturday, hitting areas including eastern Gaza City, Deir el-Balah, and the Bureij refugee camp in an apparent violation of the ceasefire agreement, adding to the ongoing humanitarian crisis. In Gaza still, residents are cautiously responding to the U.S. announcement of a second phase of the ceasefire, including the creation of a peace council to oversee temporary governance. Let's follow more with Yassine Rikti now.
In Gaza, skepticism greets the latest US-backed announcement. Shaped by months of war and a ceasefire, many residents say exists only on paper. Across the Strip, streets look like an apocalyptic landscape, where families attempt to rebuild their lives under the constant fear of renewed Zionist attacks. Local health officials report that since the ceasefire was declared last October, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed and more than 1,000 wounded, figures that have further eroded public trust.
Regarding the peace council established by the Trump administration, its success or failure depends on the Israelis, the occupying enemy. If they want it to succeed, it will succeed, otherwise it will fail. Border control, aid and reconstruction are in the hands of the Israelis.
The most important thing is to open the border crossing, to treat and evacuate the sick. It would be good if this plan actually worked, because we are in a miserable, catastrophic situation. For many Gazans, each new diplomatic initiative is measured against a reality of ongoing violence, closed borders and limited access to food, fuel and medical supplies. The immediate priority now for Gazans is the full reopening of crossings to allow aid and reconstruction to begin in earnest. The plan approved by Hamas and the Israeli occupation and promoted by US President Donald Trump proposes the establishment of a Palestinian technocratic body to manage Gaza's civil affairs, overseen by an international council during a transitional period, but on the ground the proposal is widely viewed with suspicion. Many fear it represents another attempt to reshape Gaza's governance without addressing the root causes of the conflict. This peace committee will be a prelude to a long-term hegemony that will annihilate the unity of the Palestinian people and the geographical borders between the West Bank and Gaza. After more than 2 years of devastating assault marked by mass displacement, famine and destruction, Gazans say promises of reform ring hollow. Without an end to occupation and lasting guarantees of safety, few believe the cycle of violence will truly stop.
The European Union is calling for a halt to occupation settlement projects in East al-Quds, warning they could shut the area completely to Palestinian movement. The EU expressed concern over plans for around 9,000 new units north of the city, saying they would displace thousands, fragment the West Bank, and fuel settler violence, undermining any prospects for peace in the region. Elsewhere in the Middle East, the UN's peacekeeping chief, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, has expressed serious concern over escalating aggression against UNIFIL personnel in southern Lebanon. Speaking from Jeddah, Lacroix warned that restrictions on UN movement and repeated attacks by occupation forces are putting peacekeepers at constant risk, with potentially dire consequences for stability in the region. In another story, the Syrian army says it has taken full control of the city of Deir Hafer in eastern Aleppo. Officials report that troops are now securing the city and clearing mines and unexploded ordnance. The army has also begun advancing toward nearby areas, including Meskana and Dipsi Afnan, as part of its ongoing operations in the region. The Syrian army also says it has seized control of the Al-Rasafa area and its ancient citadel in southern Raqqa, along with 7 nearby villages. Forces also captured the Shuaib ad-Dikr bridge before militants could actually destroy it, and are tightening their grip on the Tabqa military airport, a key SDF base. Operations continue as Damascus pushes to secure the region. The Syrian army is calling on the SDF to fully withdraw east of the Euphrates and to evacuate Tabqa so civilian authorities can resume control. Damascus also urges the SDF to stop obstructing efforts to stabilize the region. Meanwhile, civilians in Deir Hafer are being warned to stay clear of the military operation zone until it's fully secured and cleared of mines and unexploded ordnance to ensure their safety. Meanwhile, Iranian authorities say communications restrictions will be gradually lifted, starting with the reactivation of text messaging services, full access to the national internet network, and local messaging apps is expected in the coming period, though connectivity currently remains at just about 2% of normal levels. Elsewhere in North Africa, a top Sahrawi official has condemned what he calls disguised European funding of Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara, saying it aims to block the decolonization process. Abi Bushra al-Bashir spoke in Spain during solidarity events for the Sahrawi people, warning that EU-Morocco agreements, along with support for Morocco's occupation, are major obstacles to self-determination and a just settlement of decades-long conflict.
The European Commission consistently claims that the agreements signed with Morocco are purely economic in nature, devoid of political implications and aimed at the development of the region, without which its economy would allegedly collapse. This claim is entirely false. Even if it contained a grain of truth, it would amount to nothing more than financing Morocco's military occupation of Western Sahara and helping to create the economic and demographic conditions needed to impose a de facto colonial order, which represents the greatest obstacle to self-determination and to a just and peaceful resolution of the conflict. Morocco is heavily relying on the third phase of its strategic occupation of Western Sahara, namely economic occupation, to bury the decolonization process through policies of imposing a fait accompli. This reliance makes agreements with the European Union an indispensable lifeline for financial flows. The two preceding phases of military and demographic occupation cannot be sustained without an economic dimension and a guaranteed flow of investment into the region. Such foreign investments give the impression of official recognition, or at least tacit acceptance, of an alleged sovereignty, and may lead to the creation of a strategic link between Europe and the de facto occupation. This is particularly evident in sectors such as alternative energy, which is transforming occupied Western Sahara into one of the largest production hubs in Africa.
The Sahrawi official also says the European Union continues to violate the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination, blocking efforts to decide the territory's final status and preventing the Sahrawis from achieving independence.
The negative effects of these agreements on the legitimate rights of the Sahrawi people are multifaceted. They violate the Sahrawi people's rights to self-determination by undermining two of its four core components, the principle of their sovereignty over natural resources and the principle of the territorial integrity of Western Sahara. Moreover, these agreements contradicts rulings of the Court of Justice, which since December 2016 have affirmed that Western Sahara and the Kingdom of Morocco are two distinct and separate territories. As a result, they also abstract the third component of self-determination, namely the Sahrawi people's right to decide the final status of their territory.
Abi Bushra al-Bashir, advisor to the Sahrawi presidency, is calling for urgent international action to overturn the new EU-Morocco agreement at the European Parliament. He also urged popular action to prevent products from Western Sahara from entering European markets, warning that continued EU support for Morocco's occupation blocks the Sahrawi people from achieving self-determination.
In view of the danger posed by the economic roadmap adopted by Morocco to entrench the fait accompli, it has become more necessary than ever for the Polisario Front and its diplomats in Europe, as well as for the solidarity movement, to step up efforts in an intensive and urgent manner. This is aimed at overturning the new agreement at the level of the European Parliament and engaging in popular actions to prevent products originating from Western Sahara from entering European consumer markets.
In the same context, the Association of Friends of the Sahrawi Republic in France has condemned Morocco's decision to block a Spanish delegation from visiting Western Sahara. The group says the move is an attempt to isolate the occupied territories from international observers and highlights the restrictions placed on human rights organizations reporting on abuses against Sahrawis. In the meantime, protests have resumed across Morocco against the government's normalization with the Zionist entity. Hundreds of Moroccans took part in around 80 demonstrations nationwide in solidarity with Gaza and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Here's Zahra Frijanina.
80 demonstrations were held across 45 cities nationwide. Streets in Moroccan cities witnessed a wave of massive protests as Moroccans voiced their support for Palestine and demanded an end to all forms of normalization between the Mahsen regime and the Zionist entity, which continues its genocidal aggression against the Palestinian people in Gaza. The rallies were organized by the Moroccan Front for Support in Palestine and Against Normalization, which reaffirmed its unwavering support for the Palestinian people and their cause.
Today, Friday, January 16, 2026, Rabat renews its commitment to Palestine. We renew our pledge of loyalty to the martyrs of Palestine and to all the martyrs of the nation. Palestine is a conviction, an identity, a history, a present and a destiny, not merely an act of solidarity with an oppressed people. The Moroccan people are convinced that Palestine is a national cause, inseparable from the country's sacred issues, territorial integrity, social unity, our present and our future. We continue this movement against normalization, a normalization that is a poisoned dagger and a cancer that destroys us first, then stabs Palestine in the back and betrays it.
All forms of normalization with the occupying entity is seen as a path that has brought only shame and dishonor to the Moroccan people and is the core demand of the Moroccan Observatory against normalization at a time when Moroccan authorities are intensifying cooperation with the occupying entity across various sectors.
Normalization continues to humiliate Moroccans and to defile our land and our nation through these shameful and degrading measures. Media outlet reported that an international conference organized with the Zionist entity on what it calls blue food security is being held in Eilat, in occupied Palestine. Once again, Moroccan officials are participating while the government remains silent. The participation of officials from the Ministry of Agriculture in this Zionist conference is an absolute disgrace. What kind of food security are we as Moroccans taking part in when we submit to Zionism, to killers, to Nazis, to terrorists, to enemies of God and of humanity?
Anger continues to simmer on Morocco's streets. The Moroccan people who have supported Palestine across generations refuse to become accomplices to the crimes of the occupation. The message is clear. Normalization is a betrayal, and ending it is a national duty.
Moving on to Europe now, thousands protested across Denmark and Greenland on Saturday against US President Donald Trump's plan to take control over Greenland. Demonstrators in Copenhagen, Aarhus, Aalborg, and Odense waved Greenlandic and Danish flags, while in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, crowds including Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen denounced the plan, chanting slogans such as "Greenland is not for sale."
It's a very bad feeling. You have one guy who wants to take over our country. It's our country. It's a place where we were raised and born. People lived in Greenland. Right now, children, they don't sleep at nights. People don't sleep at nights. Our family, our friends, everybody is anxious in Greenland.
To show support for the Greenlandish people and the kingdom, and to show that even if we are Danish and live in Denmark, we are solidarity. We feel a lot of solidarity with, and are really angry about the whole situation. It's a shock to all of us that an American president can even get ideas like this.
It's very important that we stay together and show that Greenland is not for sale, and we will not like to be an American or won't be annexed by USA. So we stand together.
In the same context, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has ruled out any U.S. ground intervention in Greenland following threats from Donald Trump. Speaking from Tokyo, Meloni called on NATO to coordinate a stronger presence in the Arctic, emphasizing that the region should be a strategic priority for both the EU and NATO to prevent tensions and outside interference.
I've
always told you, and I'm convinced of this, that I consider it very difficult, a ground intervention, let's say military, on the subject of Greenland. I believe the issue is political, and I believe it will be resolved politically, and it will be resolved clearly, in my opinion too. Even with a greater commitment from all the allies in an area that is strategic for everyone, not just for the United States, but also for us and also for Europe. Maybe I don't want to say more, but basically almost at the same level.
So the tensions are indeed rising over Greenland, with the island under intense diplomatic scrutiny after US President Donald Trump accused European countries of playing a dangerous game, as he put it, and announced new tariffs until a US purchase agreement is reached. Let's get more with Karim Mustafawi now.
Tensions between the United States and Europe never ceased escalating over Greenland. President Donald Trump accused 8 European countries of playing what he called a very dangerous game in response to the military deployment by those countries there. He added that he plans to impose escalating tariffs on them until the US can secure a deal to purchase Greenland.
Starting on February 1st, 2026, all of the above-mentioned countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands and Finland will be charged a 10% tariff on any and all goods sent to the United States of America. On June 1st, 2026, the tariff will be increased to 25%. The United States of America is immediately open to negotiation with Denmark and or any of these countries that have put so much at risk, despite all that we have done for them.
On Saturday, a bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation, including 2 Republicans, visited Denmark to reaffirm support for both Denmark and Greenland. In the wake of Trump's threat, Senator Chris Coons rejected Trump's plan, saying there is no immediate threat to Greenland's security.
There are no pressing security threats to Greenland, but we share real concern about Arctic security going forward. As an original NATO ally, Denmark has been a tremendous partner for us in security, and that relationship is rooted in deeply shared values, values of democracy, of self-determination, and of respect for territorial integrity.
Meanwhile, amid the ongoing threat and pressure from Trump, the European Council President says that any U.S. security concerns over the Arctic island should be handled among NATO members as allies.
Se os Estados Unidos consideram
If the United States considers that there is a security problem or a threat, the security of Greenland should be addressed within the framework of NATO, because it is NATO's responsibility to ensure the defense of Greenland. This is not a bilateral issue between the United States and Denmark. If there is a security problem, it is a collective security issue, and we should all respond as allies. Canada has also reaffirmed its commitment to NATO's Article 5, which guarantees collective defense if any member is attacked. All in all, the issue of Greenland is being described as a challenge for NATO, with the US a key pillar of the alliance, threatening its allies. Since returning to the White House, President Trump has repeatedly emphasized Greenland's strategic importance to US security.
And in another story, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says significant progress has been made in cooperation with China, aiming to end an 8-year diplomatic stalemate. Speaking in Beijing, Carney highlighted that rapid global changes require close collaboration among major powers to address challenges facing multilateral institutions and global trade.
It has been a historic and productive 2 days, and I am very pleased to announce that we have made significant progress in a number of key areas. Stepping back, it's been 8 years since a Canadian Prime Minister visited China. And in that time, the world has changed dramatically. The technological revolution and the energy transition are accelerating at an unprecedented pace. The global trading system is undergoing a fundamental change, and the effectiveness of multilateral institutions on which trading powers such as Canada and China have greatly relied, that effectiveness has been greatly reduced. This is happening fast, it's large, it's a rupture, it's not a transition.
To the war in Ukraine now, Ukrainian negotiators arrived in the United States on Saturday to discuss a plan to end the war with Russia. The delegation, including Kyrie Budnov, National Security Council Secretary Rostam Omarov, and negotiator David Arakhamia, is meeting with U.S. officials, including Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Secretary of the Army Dan Dries-Cole, to discuss the details of a potential peace agreement. Meanwhile, Ukraine's state energy company Naftogaz says Russian forces deliberately targeted gas production facilities, disrupting supplies to Kiev, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhia. President Zelensky has ordered the acceleration of electricity imports and the delivery of additional energy equipment from international partners to ensure heating and gas for citizens amid the harsh winter conditions. Meanwhile, the Russian Ministry of Defense says its forces have captured 2 more towns in Ukraine, taking control of Pryluki in Zaporizhia and Privoli in Donetsk. The ministry announced the advances on Telegram as part of ongoing operations in the region. And in Caracas, thousands demonstrated against what they call U.S. interference in Venezuela's internal affairs in a show of popular opposition to foreign involvement. Meanwhile, interim President Delcy Rodriguez has announced the first ever contract to export liquefied petroleum gas from Venezuela, marking a historic step for the country's energy sector. More with Sofian Canturina.
Citizens in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, took the streets on Friday, holding rallies and marches to denounce what they describe as foreign interference in the country's internal affairs. Protesters voiced support for national sovereignty amid growing regional and international tensions surrounding Venezuela. Against this backdrop, acting President Delcy Rodriguez announced a major economic development, revealing that Venezuela has begun exporting liquefied gas for the first time in its history.
Los ingresos que ya The revenue is already being generated from oil sales will arrive through the central bank of Venezuela, headed by its president, Laura Guerra, and will reach private banks for the foreign exchange market mechanisms. That is important.
Eso es importante. 25
Rodriguez also pointed to efforts to boost oil output, stating that Venezuela is working toward raising production to between 1 and 2 million barrels per day, as part of broader strategy to revive the economy despite external pressure.
A contract has been signed for the commercialization of LPG gas. The first molecule of gas from Venezuela will be exported. We had said it, we had announced it, that we would export the first molecule of gas, and we are fulfilling that promise. We are fulfilling our promise to President Maduro, and we are fulfilling our promise to our people. That is the way forward. We have achieved this through our own sacrifice, because PDVSA produced this gas for export through its own sacrifice.
As tensions persist, Venezuela appears determined to confront external pressure by pushing forward economic initiatives aimed at breaking dependence and reinforcing sovereignty.
European Union and South American officials have signed a major trade agreement, sending a strong message amid tariff threats. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the deal reflects a deliberate choice for fair trade over tariffs, highlighting the real economic benefits for both regions. Here's Salman Asib now.
After more than 25 years of negotiations, Mercosur and the European Union have signed a historic trade agreement marking a major milestone in relations between the two blocs. The deal, signed in Asunción, creates the world's largest free trade zone, encompassing around 7 million people and nearly 20% of global GDP, according to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
We are creating a market of 700 million people, and a GDP of almost 20% of the global GDP is being traded here. This is phenomenal. And this agreement sends a very strong message to the world. It reflects a clear and deliberate choice. We choose fair trade over tariffs. We choose a productive, long-term partnership over isolation. And above all, we intend to deliver real and tangible benefits to our people and our businesses.
This signing brought together the presidents of Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay, with Brazil represented by its foreign minister. Paraguayan President Santiago Peña noted the long delay in reaching the deal and urged both blocs to move forward with greater courage and ambition.
La realidad es que hemos perdido mucho tiempo para llegar aquí.
The reality is that we have lost a lot of time getting here, and we could have reached an even more beneficial agreement. We could have done more. We could have achieved more benefits for our people. That's why today, I would also like to issue a challenge to everyone. Let's look to the future with more courage, with more boldness, with more audacity, and let's deepen our perfectible union even further.
Hacemos todavía más nuestra perfectible unión.
Argentine President Javier Milei, for his part, emphasized the importance of preserving the terms negotiated, cautioning against introducing additional restrictions such as quotas or safeguard mechanisms during the implementation phase.
Pero quiero insistir con algo.
I want to insist on something. It is fundamental that during the implementation stage, the spirit of what was negotiated is preserved. The incorporation of mechanisms that restrict that access, such as quotas, safeguards, or measures of equivalent effect, will significantly reduce the economic impact of the agreement and will undermine its essential objective. We have to ensure in our parliament that this does not happen. The 25 years invested oblige us to rise the occasion in this final stage.
The agreement marks a defining moment in relations between Mercosur and the European Union, laying the foundation for deeper economic integration and political cooperation. While challenges and criticisms remain, supporters see the deal as a bold step towards strengthening ties between the two regions, seeking stability, growth, and strategic partnership in a shifting global landscape.
And that would be all for tonight's news. To catch up on anything you missed or get the latest updates, you can always head over to our social media channels. From all of us here at All 24 News, I'm Karim Fazakri. Thanks for watching and do take care.